Tonight, your mind is probably caught in that familiar loop, calculating hours until morning, wondering when sleep will come, aware that every passing minute means less rest. I know that treadmill of thoughts. The more you focus on not sleeping, the more elusive sleep becomes. So tonight, we're going to step off of that treadmill. I'm going to take you back to a different time. Before smartphones kept us scrolling through endless feeds. Before television's blue light tricked our brains into wakefulness. Before electricity pushed back the darkness. To a time when humans still lived by the rising and setting of the sun, and stories told in darkness brought peace. Before we continue, though, I need to remind you to ensure you're somewhere safe for sleep, like your bed. And if you find these episodes helpful, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast. Every like, every comment, every new follower helps others find these episodes. And for a small independent podcast like this one, your support makes all the difference. It's how we grow, how we survive. To our current followers and subscribers, our little community of dreamers, thank you. So tonight, it's our second reading from John Burroughs in the Catskills, published in 1910. Burroughs was best known for his nature essays that brought readers along as companions in discovering the wild world. By the late 1800s, he had become one of America's most famous writers. Yet despite his celebrity, he remained at heart a Catskill mountain boy, deeply rooted in the landscape that shaped him. His words still resonate today because they remind us of our own connection to the natural world, a connection we often forget. Even now, as you lie in your comfortable bed, wrapped in warm covers, surrounded by the walls and windows of our modern world, the same moon that guided your ancestors' sleep shines outside of your window, and the same stars wheel overhead. Though we've built cities and created artificial days with electric light, our bodies remember the ancient rhythms. Despite our chaotic schedules and digital distractions, something deep within us still knows that nighttime is for rest, a time to set down our burdens, close our eyes, and recharge for tomorrow's dawn. Let's journey into the past together and let these gentle words smooth away the edges of your day, replacing those circling thoughts with peace and calm. But first, let's prepare ourselves with some simple breathing. Lie comfortably and focus on breathing evenly and deeply. Draw each breath in through your nose and release it through your mouth. Let each breath fill your belly so it rises slightly with every inhale. Let's try some box breathing. You inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, and then exhale for 4. It's a proven technique to help calm your nervous system and relax your body. We'll do a few together. Ready? Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Release, 2, 3, 4. Good job. One more time. In through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful. Just take half a minute to practice this rhythm, and then we'll begin our reading. This reading was taken from a chapter entitled "The Heart of the Southern Catskills." On looking at the southern and more distant Catskills from the Hudson River on the east, or on looking at them from the west, from some point of vantage in Delaware County, you see, amid the group of mountains, one that looks like the back and shoulders of a gigantic horse. The horse has got his head down, grazing. His shoulders are high, and the descent from them down his neck very steep. If he were to lift up his head, one sees that it would be carried far above all other peaks, and that the noble beast might gaze straight to his peers in the Adirondacks or the White Mountains. But the lowered head never comes up. Some spell or enchantment keeps it down there, amid the mighty herd. And the high round shoulders and the smooth strong back of the steed are alone visible. The peak to which I refer is Slide Mountain, the highest of the Catskills by some 200 feet, and probably the most inaccessible, certainly the hardest to get a view of. It is hedged about so completely by other peaks, the greatest mountain of them all, and apparently the least willing to be seen. Only at a distance of 30 or 40 miles is it seen to stand up above all other peaks. It takes its name from a landslide which occurred many years ago down its steep northern side, or down the neck of the grazing steed. The mane of spruce and balsam fir was stripped away for many 100 feet, leaving a long gray streak visible from afar. Slide Mountain is the center and the chief of the southern Catskills. Streams flow from its base and from the base of its subordinates to all points of the compass. With its summit at the center, a radius of 10 miles would include within the center described but a very little cultivated land. Only a few poor, wild farms in some of the numerous valleys. The soil is poor, a mixture of gravel and clay, and is subject to slides. It lies in the valleys in ridges and small hillocks, as if dumped there from a huge cart. The tops of the southern Catskills are all capped with a kind of conglomerate, or puddingstone, a rock of cemented quartz pebbles, which underlies the coal measures. This rock disintegrates under the action of the elements, and the sand and gravel which result are carried into the valleys and make up the most of the soil. From the northern Catskills, so far as I know them, this rock has been swept clean. Low down in the valleys, the old red sandstone crops out, and as you go west into Delaware County, in many places it alone remains and makes up most of the soil, all of the superincumbent rock having been carried away. Slide Mountain has been a summons and a challenge to me for many years. I had fished every stream that it nourished and had camped in the wilderness on all sides of it. And whenever I had caught a glimpse of its summit, I had promised myself to set foot there before another season should pass. But the seasons came and went, and my feet got no nimbler, and Slide Mountain no lower, until finally, one July, seconded by an energetic friend, we thought to bring Slide to terms by approaching him through the mountains on the east. With a farmer's son for guide, we struck in by way of Weaver Hollow, and after a long and desperate climb, contented ourselves with the Wittenberg instead of Slide. The view from the Wittenberg is in many respects more striking, as you are perched immediately above a broader and more distant sweep of country, and are only about 200 feet lower. You are here on the eastern brink of the southern Catskills, and the earth falls away at your feet and curves down through an immense stretch of forest, and then sweeps away to the Hudson and beyond. Slide is southwest of you, 6 or 7 miles distant, but is visible only when you climb into a treetop. I climbed and saluted him and promised to call next time. One would think nothing could be easier to find than a big mountain, especially when one is encamped upon a stream which he knows springs out of its very loins. But for some reason or other, we had got an idea that Slide Mountain was a very slippery customer and must be approached cautiously. We had tried from several points in the valley to get a view of it, but were not quite sure we had seen its very head. When on the Wittenberg, a neighboring peak, the year before, I had caught a brief glimpse of it only by climbing a dead tree and craning up for a moment from its topmost branch. It would seem as if the mountain had taken every precaution to shut itself off from a near view. It was a shy mountain, and we were about to stalk it through 6 or 7 miles of primitive woods, and we seemed to have some unreasonable fear that it might elude us. We had been told of parties who had essayed the ascent from this side and had returned baffled and bewildered in a tangle of primitive woods. The very bigness of the mountain baffles one. It is all mountain, whichever way you turn. And one turns sometimes in such cases before he knows it. The foot finds a steep and rugged ascent. The eye is of little service. One must be sure of his bearings and push boldly on and up. One is not unlike a flea upon a great shaggy beast, looking for the animal's head, or even like a much smaller and much less nimble creature. He may waste time and steps and think he has reached the head when he is only upon the rump. Hence I questioned our host, who had several times made the ascent closely. Larkins laid his old felt hat upon the table, and placing one hand upon one side of it and the other upon the other, said, "Their slide lies between the two forks of the stream, just as my hat lies between my two hands. David will go with you to the forks, and then you will push right on up." But Larkins was not right, though he had traveled these mountains many times over. The peak we were about to set out for did not lie between the forks, but exactly at the head of one of them. The beginnings of the stream are in the very path of the slide, as we afterward found. We broke camp early in the morning, and with our blankets strapped to our backs and rations in our pockets for 2 days, set out along an ancient and in places an obliterated bark road that followed and crossed and recrossed the stream. The morning was bright and warm, but the wind was fitful and petulant, and I predicted rain. What a forest solitude our obstructed and dilapidated wood road led us through. 5 miles of primitive woods before we came to the forks. 3 miles before we came to the burnt shanty. A name merely, no shanty there now for 25 years past. The ravages of the bark peelers were still visible, now in a space thickly strewn with the soft and decayed trunks of hemlock trees, and overgrown with wild cherry, then in huge mossy logs scattered through the beech and maple woods. Some of these logs were so soft and mossy that one could sit or recline upon them as upon a sofa. But the prettiest thing was the stream soliloquizing in such musical tones there among the moss-covered rocks and boulders. How clean it looked. What purity. Civilization corrupts the streams. Only in such remote woods can you now see a brook in all its original freshness and beauty. Only the sea and the mountain forest brook are pure. All between is contaminated more or less by the work of man. An ideal trout brook was this, now hurrying, now loitering, now deepening around a great boulder, now gliding evenly over a pavement of green-gray stone and pebbles. No sentiment or stain of any kind, but white and sparkling as snow water, and nearly as cool. Indeed, the water of all this Catskill region is the best in the world. For the first few days, one feels as if he could almost live on the water alone. He cannot drink enough of it. In this particular, it is indeed the good Bible land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills. Near the forks we caught, or thought we caught, through an opening, a glimpse of slide. Was it slide? Was it the head, or the rump, or the shoulder of the shaggy monster we were in quest of? At the forks, there was a bewildering maze of underbrush and great trees, and the way did not seem at all certain, nor was David, who was then at the end of his reckoning, able to reassure us. But in assaulting a mountain, as in assaulting a fort, boldness is the watchword. We pressed forward, following a line of blazed trees for nearly a mile, then, turning to the left, began the ascent of the mountain. It was steep, hard climbing. We saw numerous marks of both bears and deer, but no birds, save at long intervals the winter wren, flitting here and there, and darting under logs and rubbish like a mouse. Occasionally, its lyrical song would break the silence. After we had climbed an hour or two, the clouds began to gather, and presently the rain began to come down. This was discouraging, but we put our backs up against trees and rocks and waited for the shower to pass. But the shower was light and brief, and we were soon underway again. 3 hours from the forks brought us out on the broad level of the mountain, upon which Slide, considered as an isolated peak, is reared. After a time, we entered a dense growth of spruce, which covered a slight depression in the table of the mountain. The moss was deep, the ground spongy, the light dim, and the air hushed. The transition from the open, leafy woods to this dim, silent grove was very marked. It was like the passage from the street into the temple. Here we paused a while and ate our lunch and refreshed ourselves with water gathered from a little well sunk in the moss. The quiet and repose of this spruce grove proved to be the calm that goes before the storm. As we passed out of it, we came plumb upon the most perpendicular battlements of Slide. The mountain rose like a huge, rock-bound fortress from this plain-like expanse. It was ledge upon ledge, precipice upon precipice, up which and over which we made our way slowly and with great labor, now pulling ourselves up by our hands, then cautiously finding niches for our feet and zigzagging right and left from shelf to shelf. This northern side of the mountain was thickly covered with moss and lichens, like the north side of a tree. This made it soft to the foot and broke many a slip and fall. Everywhere a stunted growth of yellow birch, mountain ash, and spruce and fir opposed our progress. The ascent at such an angle with a roll of blankets on your back is not unlike climbing a tree. Every limb resists your progress and pushes you back, so that when we at last reached the summit, after 12 or 1,500 feet of this sort of work, the fight was about all out of the best of us. It was then nearly 2 o'clock, so that we had been about 7 hours in coming 7 miles. Here, on the top of the mountain, we overtook spring, which had been gone from the valley nearly a month. Red clover was opening in the valley below, and wild strawberries just ripening. On the summit, the yellow birch was just hanging out its catkins, and the claytonia, or spring beauty, was in bloom. The leaf buds of the trees were just bursting, making a faint mist of green, which, as the eye swept downward, gradually deepened until it became a dense, massive cloud in the valleys. At the foot of the mountain, the northern green lily and low shadbush were showing their berries. But long before the top was reached, they were found in bloom. I had never before stood amid blooming claytonia, a flower of April, and looked down upon a field that held ripening strawberries. Every 1,000 feet elevation seemed to make about 10 days difference in the vegetation, so that the season was a month or more later on the top of the mountain than at the base. A very pretty flower, which we began to meet with well up on the mountainside, was the painted trillium. The petals white and veined with pink. The low stunted growth of spruce and fir, which closed the top of slide, had been cut away over a small space on the highest point, laying open the view on nearly all sides. Here we sat down and enjoyed our triumph. We saw the world as the hawk or the balloonist sees it when he is 3,000 feet in the air. How soft and flowing all the outlines of the hills and mountains beneath us looked. The forest dropped down and undulated away over them, covering them like a carpet. To the east, we looked over the nearby Wittenberg Range to the Hudson and beyond. To the south, Peakamoose with its sharp crest, and Table Mountain with its long level top were the two conspicuous objects. In the west, Mount Graham and Double Top, about 3,800 feet each, arrested the eye. While in our front to the north, we looked over the top of Panther Mountain to the multitudinous peaks of the northern Catskills. All was mountain and forest on every hand. Civilization seemed to have done little more than to have scratched this rough, shaggy surface of the earth here and there. In any such view, the wild, the aboriginal, the geographical greatly predominate. The works of man dwindle, and the original features of the huge globe come out. Every single object or point is dwarfed. The valley of the Hudson is only a wrinkle in the earth's surface. You discover with a feeling of surprise that the great thing is the earth itself, which stretches away on every hand so far beyond your ken. But when the clouds came down and enveloped us on Slide Mountain, the grandeur, the solemnness were gone in a twinkling. The pretentious-looking clouds proved to be nothing but base fog that wet us and extinguished the world for us. How tame and prosy and humdrum the scene instantly became. But when the fog lifted, and we looked from under it as from under a just raised lid, and the eye plunged again like an escaped bird into those vast gulfs of space that opened at our feet, the feeling of grandeur and solemnness quickly came back. The first want we felt on the top of Slide, after we had got some rest, was a want of water. Several of us cast about right and left, but no sign of water was found. But water must be had, so we all started off deliberately to hunt it up. We had not gone many 100 yards before we chanced upon an ice cave beneath some rocks, vast masses of ice, with crystal pools of water near. This was good luck, indeed, and put a new and a brighter face on the situation. Slide Mountain enjoys a distinction which no other mountain in the state, so far as is known, does. It has a thrush peculiar to itself. This thrush was discovered and described by Eugene P. Bicknell of New York in 1880 and has been named Bicknell's thrush. A better name would have been Slide Mountain thrush, as the bird so far has been found only on this mountain. I did not see or hear it upon the Wittenberg, which is only a few miles distant and only 200 feet lower. In its appearance to the eye among the trees, one would not distinguish it from the gray-cheeked thrush of Baird or the olive-backed thrush, but his song is totally different. The moment I heard it, I said, "There is a new bird, a new thrush," for the quality of all thrush songs is the same. A moment more, and I knew it was Bicknell's thrush. The song is in a minor key, finer, more attenuated, and more under the breath than that of any other thrush. It seemed as if the bird was blowing in a delicate, slender, golden tube, so fine and yet so flute-like and resonant the song appeared. At times, It was like a musical whisper of great sweetness and power. The birds were numerous about the summit, but we saw them nowhere else. No other thrush was seen, though a few times during our stay, I caught a mere echo of the hermit's song far down the mountainside. A bird I was not prepared to see or to hear was the blackpoll warbler, a bird usually found much further north, for here it was, amid the balsam firs, uttering its simple song. As these words settle into your thoughts, notice how your breathing has found its perfect pace. With each exhale, tension melts away. With each inhale, calmness fills you. Your body has grown heavy, and your mind peaceful. Don't chase sleep. Simply be present in this moment of quiet. Let the night wrap around you like a gentle blanket. Everything moves in its own rhythm. Clouds drift unhurried across the moon. Tides rise and fall. Your path to sleep needs no rushing. Release your thoughts into the darkness. Trust in this moment of peace. Above you, stars trace their nightly dance. Below you, the earth cradles you in its embrace. You're precisely where you need to be. Your body holds the wisdom of sleep within it. There's no need to direct it, only to trust it. Feel the softness of your bed, the comforting weight of your covers, and the quiet that surrounds you. Here in this space, you are safe. Here, you are held in night's gentle embrace. Here, you can fully let go. Rest now, knowing sleep approaches just like waves returning to shore, like breath following breath. Rest now. Rest deeply. Rest.